Welcome to the Prosper series, where we share the stories of remarkable veterans and military families who have prospered in their life after service. I'm your host, Talissa Papamau. I'm a veteran myself, having served 7 years in the Australian Army. In today's episode, we welcome our guest, Aaron Cornwall. Aaron, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Aaron is a former combat engineer and Afghanistan war veteran. He joined the Australian Army at the age of 19 and retired in 2012. After transitioning, Aaron has found a new sense of purpose by supporting veterans transitioning to higher education or civilian life. He is the leader in student veteran support and currently works at the Australian Catholic University, managing a raft of programs that support the health and wellbeing of veterans and their families as they transition away from the military service. And in September of this year, Aaron won Veteran Employee of the Year at the Prime Minister's National Employment Awards. Congratulations on your award, Aaron. It's great to have you this morning.
Oh, thank you. It was an honour to receive it.
So going back, Aaron, why did you join the ADF? And if you could talk us through some of the key highlights of your career.
Yeah, sure. So I guess like many, growing up, I was always interested in the Defence Force. I was interested in the Army. I was interested in, I guess, war, like lots of young people are. As I was growing up, I threw around the idea of joining the ADF, and it wasn't until I was in high school that I really started to, I guess, contemplate it. My friendship circle at that point in time, I guess, weren't really going down a similar path. And so I went into college, and after doing a year at college, I decided that it would be a good point to look at joining the ADF. I applied, went in for my Joe's Day, which was great. Found out a lot of information, put my application in, and shortly after, I was made an offer and I enlisted into the Australian Army as a combat engineer. Like many, like all general entry, I went to Kapuka, did my basic training, then I went to Moorebank to do my initial employment training at the School of Military Engineering. I spent some time down there before being posted up to 3rd Combat Engineer Regiment in Townsville, where I spent my career. And over that time, I was exposed to, I guess, a wealth of experiences. I managed to do a lot of enemy parties. I did a lot of support training for battle noise simulation for the pre-deployments. And then in 2010, I went to Papua New Guinea with Wontok Warrior, which was great. I got to see how some international forces operate, see the culture over there. The highlight, I guess, of my career, there were probably two whilst I was serving. One was doing the Combat Fitness Leader course. That's really where I found my passion for health and fitness. I managed to go through that. And that kind of set me up for future aspirations. And then I deployed to Afghanistan in 2011 to 2012 as a high-risk searcher. That really was the culmination of my military career, everything that I'd done up until that point, putting it into practice, and then coming back and really feeling like I had done what I'd set out to do.
That's fantastic. And I think for a lot of people, they're intrigued about, why particularly Australian veterans want to go on deployments. But I think you put so much energy and effort into going through your training that it's almost like training for a marathon that you never get to run if you don't actually get to go. So it's definitely a culmination of most people's careers. Was there any other defining moment in your ADF, good or bad?
Look, I learned a lot about myself, about other people. It really instilled into me the values, which I guess I see as most important today. Like many, so I say like many, but, I talk to a lot of people, and I've had a lot of friends, and they've joined and they've said, I could never go in and be told what to do. I'd tell them where to go. For me, I was the opposite. I went in and I was very much going, well, look, I'm a blank slate and I'm ready. I would like to know how to be the best I can be. And the Defence Force set me up with those skills, and those values, which have driven me to where I am now.
It's fantastic. It's a mindset too, isn't it? It's one. I think one thing that's I've definitely taken with military is to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I think that's where the real growth happens. And there is a lot to be said for military service, and it's great to see veterans out there like yourself who have managed to translate those experiences in a way that empowers them and enables them in their lives. I think we need to definitely see more of it. We might just now chat a little bit about your transition. So what led to that?
Look, it was probably whilst we were overseas that, I started to think about, what are the next steps? Where am I going to be in 10 or 20 years' time? People I knew when I was serving used to say, oh, Aaron, he's a lifer. And, that's how I saw it as well. And it wasn't until we got back to Australia that I kind of went, well, I'd really like to progress, and I'd probably like to progress into the fitness space. Without going into the details, the thing in the back of my mind was I was fully aware that a carrot may have been getting dangled, and I'd wised up over time, and so I decided I'd take that step and jump out and pursue that in my own time. That's when I started operating as a sole trader, running my own business, applying those skills in a civilian context. I loved the Army. I had nothing against it, and everybody likes to joke back about how frustrating and annoying it could be. But at the same time, those are the things which I miss. I like the regiment. I like the structure. And I like knowing that everybody's working to the same cause and everybody has the same end goal.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So you essentially did your combat fitness leaders course, which is definitely not for the faint-hearted, and you sort of carried your passion into civilian life. So what did you do? So you went into the fitness industry when you left?
Yeah, so in that last couple of months that I was serving, I went through, I got my civilian accreditations, I did my Cert 3 and 4 in fitness, went through, I did some business short courses, mapped out what it would look like running a small business, tried to find those areas which I would focus on, and then I jumped out. And, I invested into running a small business, leveraging my military skill set, trying to really go down the path of helping other people outside in the community. And it was great. I guess the biggest realization I had is that it's not the military, and you can't run PT how you do in the military. And that was a learning curve. People are pretty quick to realize that they don't have to be there. And, if you push people to the same extent that you do in defence, they're pretty quick to realize that they're paying to be there. But, that was just adapting. And as it went on, I learned and I developed my business acumen and how to run a small business, how that could, how to choose a specific market, differentiate myself and kind of just focus down into one space. And then that led me into managing a small gym franchise in Brisbane.
That's fantastic. I guess everyone that has been self-employed, or everyone who's ever ran a small business, I think has a newfound appreciation for financial literacy and financial well-being. Do you feel that you were well equipped for that, or was it sort of learning as you went?
Look, to be honest, I'd say that I was well equipped as much as I could. I was a young a young man, recently separated from defence. I'd just come back from a deployment. I was just saying the other day, essentially, I had the confidence, the drive, and the motivation. And the way I'd sum that up is I was bulletproof. So there wasn't too much that was going to deter me from what I was going to do. I'd like to say, yeah, I was financially literate. I mapped out my business model, but there was a lot to learn, and I did do a lot of that learning once I got the business going. I guess once you put things into practice, that's when you start to realise the depth and the complexity of what you need to be successful, and then pulling that all together, realising what are the things that stand out and balancing which areas to focus on. So no, look, I'd say I was somewhat prepared, but look, I definitely could have done with a bit more background in the business space.
Sure, that's fantastic. So, I guess I'm interested in what advice or tips you may have for veterans who are at the beginning of their transition.
I guess the biggest thing which I look back at is planning in advance. So, when I first had that inclination or that thought about separating from defence, and for me that was quite quick and it was quite rapid. So really there wasn't a lot of time, but I wish I had started thinking about that maybe 2 years in, or maybe the first year when I joined, and started to look at what am I going to need at the end. What happens if my career ends and it's not my decision? And I kind of essentially have to rapidly prepare myself for transition. I was fortunate that I didn't have to do that, but that would be my advice, is to start thinking about it early on. Everybody likes to think that they're in control of where they are and where they're going, but ultimately, looking at a lot of the separation rates and medical transitions, it's not something that you always have control of, and even the fittest and healthiest can still be, a victim to an unexpected accident, which can ultimately cut their career short. Utilising your time in service means that you don't have to worry as much about your financial support. You do have all the internal support structures in defence, such as like DAS, training courses, resume development, and kind of mapping it all out. So that would be my advice, is to start thinking early. And then when it comes to that point of transition, it's great to have a plan A. It's definitely good to have a plan B. But the thing that's probably going to save you from any type of massive disruption is having that plan C and the plan D and the worst case scenario, because you don't know if you're going to hit that worst case scenario.
Thank you. That's fantastic advice. A little more sort of in the financial wellbeing space, employability is a big part of that, and I know there's been a lot of work in the transfer and recognition of military experience and military skill sets, which I think might lend itself really well to some of the work you're now doing with the Australian Catholic University, if you wanted to speak to that at all.
Yeah, sure. So I guess just quickly on how I got there, I worked managing the gym, and then I studied part-time, did my bachelor's, and during that time I realised that defence have the skills, defence essentially set me up with the skills to excel and succeed in higher education. Sharing that with my peers is where I am now, and I was very fortunate to secure that role in 2020. For me, one of the big things I found after running the small business, going into managing the gym, was there was something missing throughout that entire time. There was something I just couldn't quite put my finger on, and it probably took a couple of years for me to really figure it out, but it was the sense of meaning and purpose in the things that I was doing. It was great to have an impact on an individual, on a small group of individuals, but coming from defence, you're a small cog in a big machine, so your contributions feel like they are much bigger. We are doing what the Army wants us to do, or what the Defence Force wants us to do. And no matter how menial the task, it's always contributing to that larger piece. And I really struggled with that, and it did take me a long time to kind of get my head around it. Coming into uni, I found that it gave me a very clear purpose for the short term. For the next 3 to 6 years, I'm going to be going in, I'm going to be doing my classes, and at the end, I'm going to have a bachelor degree, which is not only an achievement, but it's going to increase my employability. At the end of my degree, I went to Timor-Leste as part of a short-term international student experience, part of the Future and Youth program. And for me, that really highlighted that there is a massive opportunity for meaningful employment post-study. There are lots of opportunities for meaningful employment out there, and you don't necessarily need a degree to get that. But higher education does provide increased accessibility to meaningful employment. But not only that, it does increase employability significantly. You can have a bachelor's in, I'll use my case as an example, a Bachelor of Exercise Sports Science, yet I secured a role in an administrative position supporting current and ex-serving members and their families to transition to study. I guess comparable to defence, the way that a bachelor works is there are a lot of transferable skills and soft skills, and by completing a degree, you demonstrate that you can dedicate the time to pursuing the education, you can complete the task, and then within that degree, you demonstrate a wide range of skills which any employer would probably be looking for.
Further education definitely opens up opportunities, both in the field of study, but also, like has been the case for you, sort of laterally to that. And I'm sure you find the role that you're doing now incredibly rewarding. I'm considering going back to study myself. I think you're also potentially doing an MBA. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. After completing my bachelor degree, I went in, I knew that I really enjoyed study. I knew that I would like to work in the university space. I went on to do a graduate certificate in clinical exercise rehabilitation. And following that, within my role, and I will say that I got this skill set from defence. Veterans are very good at identifying gaps, figuring out what needs to go into that gap in order to fix the thing. And for me, I realised that, great, I've got a really good background and knowledge of defence. I've got an understanding of what it's like from lived experience. But then working in a space where it is business administration, we're looking at strategic planning, we're looking at managing finances, we're looking at what's the vision, what's the goal, and to really bring some credibility to what I was doing, and to also make sure that I was giving the best support that I could. I identified that it would be great to do some specific study in that area. So having a bachelor's, I went straight into the Masters of Business Administration. I'm in my last unit, so I'll finish that December this year, or everything going smoothly, which will be great.
That's fantastic. Veterans are resourceful people, I think, because we are mission or outcome focused. It makes it easy to identify where the gaps are and what we need to do to achieve a particular outcome. And I think that is a culture or a behaviour even across all military, regardless of rank. And it's great to see that that can really be an advantage in academia. I'm thinking about studying my MBA also. Awesome. I actually want to become an actuary, but wow. I don't have a lot of friends. and you know what, maths is not my friend either, but I'm really passionate about about sort of economics, understanding, being able to predict patterns and data and things like that. So I think this is going to be the poke that I need, or the encouragement I need to start on my own journey again as well. So
it's amazing.
Thank you. And so, do you want to touch on the award or anything else you'd like to talk about? I'm aware you just got back from Sydney, and you have obviously won an amazing award this year. I'd love to hear about both.
Yes, sure. So I guess starting, I was very fortunate. I was honoured and privileged to receive the Prime Minister's National Veterans Employment Program Veteran Employee of the Year Award in Canberra about 6 weeks ago. Absolutely thrilled. It was brilliant to receive the recognition. I guess everybody, I talk to a lot of people in a lot of different fields, and everybody gets this level of imposter syndrome. Everybody feels like they're doing something, but maybe they're not qualified, or they're not, they doubt themselves and their abilities. And so I guess for me to receive that was acknowledgement that I am doing something, that I am doing the right thing, but even more so, and I said this on the night, it was a recognition of my employer, being the Australian Catholic University, the work they're doing and the work that I'm able to help support. But then also the team, the team that I work with has grown significantly. Back in 2020, it was me, then it was me and a casual student staff member, and now we've got 3 full-time staff members spread across the east coast of Australia, and then several casual staff members who are all student veterans or family of veterans. And we get to support current and ex-serving members coming into higher ed. So to be able to receive that, show what we're doing, show what's possible, show that veterans can give back and that they have a very unique set of skills was amazing. Further to that, recently, so Monday this week, we celebrated the significant and meaningful contributions of our student veterans whilst they were studying at ACU. So in 2020, we established the ACU Student Veteran Impact Awards, and these awards are there to encourage and recognise significant and meaningful contributions from student veterans to the community, both inside the university and outside the university, whilst they're studying at ACU. This year we saw 4 awards awarded. So we had the Sir Peter Cosgrove Veteran Impact Award, which was awarded to Ryan Shaw. We had the Student Veteran Impact Award for a graduating student, awarded to Crystal Brown. We had the Student Veteran Impact Award for continuing students, awarded to Joan Hardgrave. And we had the Student Veteran Impact Award for continuing students' family, awarded to Lucinda Ledbetter. So it was great to come together, recognise those contributions, celebrate them with a range of distinguished guests, ACU staff, ex-service organisations, and those supportive of the cause.
And congratulations again to yourself for your fantastic award, and by the sounds of it, your leadership around the program, and also the veterans who have also won the awards with ACU. I think the growth of the program and the success of the program so far shows the merit and the need, and it's fantastic to hear about veterans who are going on and prospering in their post-service lives. Veterans do have, I think, the tendency to think that their time in service is the pinnacle of everything in their life.
Since leaving Defence, the biggest challenge I guess I faced was meaning and purpose, but then I did find myself in the trap of defining myself by my role and by my title and by my experiences at that point in time. I went from being a soldier to being a civilian, and I had a very clear time point on when that was. I got out and I went, what could it be? It'll be 1 year from the day I separate. And so 1 year from the day I separated from Defence, I said, I'm a civilian, I'm no longer defence, I can't say I was in the army anymore, it's just done. And obviously that creates a lot of issues. Coming in being a student, I identified myself as a student. And over time, I identified myself as the manager of a gym. I came into the veterans programs and I identified myself as the student veteran support officer. And then, my role became, my identity came entwined with what it was that I was doing at the time. And it's great. It's great if things are good. If you take away that role, essentially you are back where you were at square one, having no identity, if everything is tied to that. And my realisation over the past years or months, and more so in the past couple of months, is that, we aren't defined by our roles. That's probably the big piece. We're defined by the culmination of all of our experiences and bringing them all together. I'm Aaron Cornwall, Student Veteran Services Manager, but I'm also a father, I'm a husband, I'm a graduate, I'm a professional, I'm a friend. These are the things that make me who I am. And I guess for those out there, I would encourage them to embrace that. You are not defined by that one singular item, event, or role. You are the combination of everything put together, and that's what's going to give you that security moving forward if things are to change. If those unexpected things are to occur, you can fall back on, well, I'm not that, I am this.
So thank you very much for your time today, Aaron. It's been great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
To all our listeners, we hope you have got some valuable insights from this discussion. You can listen to more such veteran transition stories. Keep an eye out on our social media channels or visit our website for future updates.